to the Grind to Growth to Greatness podcast. The best and brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, creators, athletes. We'll talk to them all, and we'll get the good, the bad, and the ugly on how they made it. Decoding the secrets of success. And now your host, Terry Barr.
Hey, good morning. We are in Northern Virginia this morning. We have a very special guest. His name is Gary Cox. It's C-O-X with an E on the end, in case you're wondering, wanted to look him up while we're talking. Gary has a very unique story, and Gary reached out to me and said, I'd love to be on your podcast. I said, that sounds great. Let me look. Absolutely a stunning story, and we're going to get into it. But Gary Cox is a business and life strategist. He's an author. He's been on multiple shows, national shows, Oprah. He's been on, a bunch of them, Fox and Friends, CNBC, and he's been speakers with Zig Ziglar and the like. So he's a well-recognizable guy that's spent a lot of time in the media. But his story, his underlying story, and here at Grind to Growth to Greatness, we like to get the grit behind the grind. In other words, everybody grinds out the first part of their life, but what is the grit? What is the underlying story to that? Well, Gary's got a really, really interesting story, and we want to dig in for as long as we have today and really understand how he got from this tragedy-stricken, and you'll understand when we get into it, but tragedy-stricken youth to the businessy end, because it's all connected. So I just want to welcome Gary in. Gary, thanks for being here. Where are you at right now this morning?
I'm in my home office in Florida, Terry.
In Florida, and Gary spent
sir.
a little bit of time going here and there and yonder, so we'll even talk about that. So Gary, thanks for being here. Welcome in.
Thank you, Terry. Looking forward to this. This is good stuff.
Awesome. Well, Gary was born and raised in Jamaica, and he calls himself Jamaican, and I guess that's
right.
Spent time here and spent time there, so he's got a lot of family still there. Born and raised Jamaica. Gary's early on in his life had a lot of tragedy in his life, a lot of things that went wrong, I would say, but those wrongs eventually turned into what he has now, and he's done great things for a lot of different people. So, Gary, I want you to kind of start at the beginning, and I know you've told this story 100 times, and I appreciate the fact you're going to tell it again, but start at the beginning. Give us the background of what happened to you starting at age 11, and let us dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to start my first business when I was younger. So when I was a kid, I always liked doing things with my hands. So I was very proactive about maybe some kind of a business. I didn't know what, but I'm just really, really proactive. So I started a little business, and as you mentioned, I'm from Jamaica, so I'm from the island. So one of the islands I used to visit a lot of the Cayman Islands, and in the Cayman Islands, we used to have what's called black coral. It's illegal at this time to even harvest that out of the ocean, but it was very expensive even at the time. And I saw people carving it into jewelry and selling it, and I figured, well, you know what? I want to learn how to do that because I love doing things with my hand.
Sure.
And so I learned how to do that. So I came back to the States, and I went ahead and started selling this stuff to some of kids in school when I was older, like 15. And then I started my own jewelry business. And when I'll never forget this. I should have brought it with me. I didn't even think about it. But when I was in high school, I would sell jewelry to the girls in school. And I remember feeling my pocket, and there was a lot of money in there. And I didn't want to pull all that money out, Terry, in front of kids because I didn't want them to think what I was doing or something. So I went into the bathroom stall. I'll never forget it. Dark blue painted bathroom stall, and closed the door. I wanted to be so secretive. I literally stood on top of the toilet and put my head down so nobody could see me out of the top. And I pulled my money out, and I counted $400.
The mind of a little kid, right?
Right? Okay. I'm thinking $400. Or keep going to school. I said, forget this. Wow. So end of my junior year, I went to my principal. His name was Doc. That's what we called him. I said to him, Doc, I got a goal. I know it's not a good goal. The goal is to quit school. And I know I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to unless you do a deal with me. Here's my proposal. For my senior year, I don't want to show up in school at all. I want to do my jewelry business full time. And I know I'm supposed to have a supervisor to grade me, and I'm going to have no supervisor. So I'm going to have to grade myself. And I don't want to show up, and I want my diploma at the end of the year. He thought about it, Terry, I swear, no more than 10 seconds. He said, go for it. So for my senior year, I started rocking, man. Shortly after that, I was making $100,000 a year, which would probably be equivalent to 3-4 million now. And then I got my diploma. I got a 4.0 average because I was my supervisor. It's not what you know, but who you know, right? So I gave myself an A. Why not? And that's how I got started. Then things changed. I got married. We had a baby, and life changed dramatically after that. My wife then tells me later that baby really isn't mine.
Oh boy.
That was part of the beginning to feeling massive trauma in my life. And at the time frame, all this, my father was murdered. I get a phone call from my mom to let me know he's been shot point blank in his chest, drowned in his own blood. And so now we're stacking pain. I mean, this is major pain, right?
Then my grandfather, like a very short period of time.
Oh yeah, all by the time I was 21. Okay. Yeah, but then my grandfather and stepfather died of cancer. My $100,000 business, lost it all, gone. And it was pretty rough stuff. And then unfortunately, I was born and raised in a cult. I left that about 15 plus years ago. And their program,
which cult was that? Which cult?
Jehovah's Witnesses, huge cult, huge. And then they're programmed, family and so-called friends are programmed to shun you and treat you as if you're dead for the rest of your life. So now I've lost everything. That put me $350,000 in debt like friggin' overnight because I thought it was going to be easier. Trust me, my wife telling me my baby isn't mine, cheating on me with an employee that was 15 years old is a cakewalk compared to that. So there's my story.
Wow. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that story, but when
I didn't depress you too much, did I? No.
No, I mean, I'm thankful my story doesn't sound anything like that, but we all have our, our story at some level, our pain, our trauma. But as a young kid in high school, you said you started your jewelry store. Now, did that jewelry start in Jamaica, or did you harvest stuff at Jamaica, then come to the U.S., or how did that work? And then why did you come back to the U.S. initially to start your
initially I came back to the States because my parents got a divorce. So I'm one of four. So the boy stayed with my dad. My sister and I came to the States with my mom. Gotcha. So I started fourth grade in the United. I finished. I think I started fourth or fifth grade in the United States. And then I obviously I go back and forth quite frequently. I was in Jamaica last week. I'll be in the Bahamas in a couple days. So it's my jam.
Okay. So you get out of high school, you kind of got some things going. You're 17, 18 years old. Did you get married right out of high school then?
Yeah, 17. Bad move.
17. Yeah.
That's part of the cult thing, but anyway.
So that was part of you married kind of with
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any relationship with your the child that was born by your wife?
No, it's not mine. So it's like having a relationship with 10 kids down the road. Yeah. It's not mine. So let somebody else worry about him.
Yeah.
I am not that. So I'm on that journey now.
Okay. So it sounds to me like you're out of the cult 15 years ago. I mean, you're on a pretty new journey right now. I mean, this is fairly,
the ripple effects. I mean, I've been, you think about any type of programming, right? Type of programming, and this programming was well over 40 years of it. So I am blessed to do what I do because I'm able to rewire myself. And I see the patterns that I have to work on breaking. And, a lot of times the problems that people have in their business and their finances is a reflection of the things that are stuck in what I refer to as their emotional hard drive.
Sure.
And I'm aware of that. And the first thing is awareness, so I know what my positive triggers are. I know what my negative triggers are. And these things do reflect us as entrepreneurs. So if you can identify, and maybe somebody else's story who's listening is maybe not as crazy as mine, but bottom line is you got crap stuck in your emotional hard drive. And if we don't clean it out, it just gets more filled and more filled. It's just like a computer, right? What happens to it? It slows it down and slows it down. You go to download a PDF and you click it once and you get a little impatient like me. So what do? You click it again and you click it again. Every time we're doing that, we're just filling up our emotional hard drive. And if we don't know how to handle it, when we have all these great desires to be more successful, we push forward and we feel a block, we feel a stall. And if we're not aware of where that's coming from and how to change it, then we'll probably really, really slow toward our journey, or we might even quit.
And I think that's true. I think a lot of people do. They give up. Some of them give up, and suicide's a big thing in our country. They give up because they don't know how to rewire things. But some give up and just go through life, and they don't do anything with their life because they don't know how to change it. And I guess that's one of the things that I did want to talk a little bit about what your business is. But at what age did you start to see, like, I really have some issues? You're living inside this cult, and you get out 15 years ago. You and I are about the same age. So that was, I guess you're about 40, 45, something like that. At what age did you start realizing that some of these things that I have going on, I've got to figure out how to change?
That's a pretty cool question, Terry. And I don't think anybody's really asked me that in the way you've asked it. The wake-up call for me is when I left. And then I realized how screwed up I was. And I'll tell you why. And I gotta hold the tears back. Oof. So I remember pain so intense. I remember, Terry, being in a condo once I left by myself. My mind was so screwed up that the moment I got up, I had to go in my shower and I had to turn from Jamaica. I'm turning, Bob Marley, Jamaican music as loud as I possibly can so I cannot think. That's how bad it was. Once I was in the shower, I got my head together. My brain could function now. Like right now, what I do every morning, and it's not because of this stuff, I type about 90 to 100 words a minute. And I do that now as a pattern to get my brain functioning really fast and focused. But it was so bad that I had to have the music blare as loud as I possibly could get it, because I just needed to have something distract me from not being able to think and cave in from the pain. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I got a lot of cleaning out to do. And that was the process for me.
So that was pretty directly after you left then.
That was fresh. That was a fresh. We're talking months. Fresh.
So how do you go from that moment in the shower thinking to myself, I just left, I'm at a breaking point. I mean, we'll call it a breaking point because it sounds like it was.
Oh, yeah.
How do I go from that breaking point, and how long did it take you to get from that breaking point to say, okay, I need to take a deep breath. I need to find what my markers are and find what my triggers are, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
How do I go? How long did that take for you to go, okay, I could do this. I'm going to figure it out. And who did you go to? Because nobody does this on their own. I mean, I know you're self-reliant, and I've seen a few of your videos, and you always talk about, hey, you've got to say, there's no problem here. I got this. But it took you a while to get to that mantra. And so who did you go to, and how did you start that process directly after that moment?
Well, if I had not been doing what I did for a living, so after the jewelry business, I got into, speaking and training. Then I realized that, and I don't say this arrogantly, and I had a hard time accepting this, but I have a gift to reprogram people very quickly. That's why I did Dr. Phil's show, The Doctors, for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I believe if I had not had those skills, I would have committed suicide. I have no question in my mind about that. So I was probably too self-reliant, because you're not allowed to have therapy and so forth. In fact, I just hired an amazing therapist just recently for a relationship issue, because when you're the picture in the frame, it's hard for you to see things. So I have learned to hire consultants and experts on everything, business, the whole 9 yards, so I can get different perspectives.
Well, that was my question. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
That was kind of my question. Like at that point in time, you're telling me you're doing speaking, and you're doing the Dr. Phil show. And did you just was there a moment where you woke up and go, holy cow, I'm not even reprogramming myself here?
No, because
using my tools.
No, I used them. Trust me. Like I said, if I didn't, I would have committed suicide.
Okay.
There's no question about it. I know the principles of you're going to have to push through the pain. I know it not just logically, but emotionally. And the sad thing for me is we were not allowed to have any type of therapy. There was no such thing because, that might put you on the wrong course. And it's just a way of them controlling you. And so all these, the word transparent, authenticity, being authentic, therapy, these were all foreign things to me.
Right.
So in the cult, when people outside of the cult, when I would do seminars, when they would ask me, so, how many books have you read? I wouldn't really say the number because it seems embarrassing, but it was really like 4 books. One was the Bible, one was How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the 2, I have no idea what they are. I have more than 4 books in my office right now that I've read in all my adult life. I have books that, look, I got 2 here, 2, 3, 4. I read 5. I read 2 to 4 books a day, right? So it's a process, right? But I knew the basic principles of reprogramming myself. And I was fortunate that I was too prideful to go bankrupt, even though I probably should have. I say that now reluctantly because it forced me to make some changes. So I literally put everything in storage. I went on the road for 3 years and 3 months, knocking on doors, selling my products and programs till I got myself totally out of debt and debt free.
Wow, that's tremendous. Who did you sell to? Like you're on the road for 3 years.
Sales organization. So I built a team up, and my team would call organizations, car dealers, insurance, real estate, and they would say, "Hey, Gary's on a promotional tour," and I would just travel, and I'd go in and I did over between that and years of doing this, 3,000 to 5,000 speaking engagements. So I've chilled out for the last 4 or 5 years. So. I'm getting back on very, very heavy now. So I'm going back on the road, doing speaking engagements, and having a lot of fun with this.
Tell me why. Why are you doing that now?
Because I'm not as fulfilled. I've been, I tell people, and they have a hard time believing this, but when you know me personally, it makes sense. I'd rather be in a cave on a private island left alone. I like my privacy, but it's boring. It's not fulfilling. And, when you have something that you feel that you should be sharing and other people can benefit from, you're probably doing not just all of them a disservice, but you're doing yourself a disservice. Right. And no man is an island, right? No man is an island. So plus I'm able to support my team and grow and help other people that listen to me and join my programs and help them along the way too for their business or, whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tell me why 4 or 5 years ago did you shut it down or start to slow down? Did you feel like what was the catalyst for shutting it down? If you feel like your business is something that gives you purpose and gives you satisfaction, and you're not alone that way. Why did you shut it down 5 years? What was the catalyst that made you do that? Was there another direction that you wanted to go?
There was another direction to some degree, but with 3,000 to 5,000 speaking engagements under your belt, living in hotels for 3 years and 3 months straight, not getting a hug from a human being maybe once every month or 2 months, it's not mentally healthy. So I figured, let me just, regroup a little bit. Then I started piddling with stuff. Then I had some close friends, and I had one particular close friend that we're partners in our company today. She says, "Gary, you can't keep hidden. We got to get you back out again." So here I am. I'm back out again.
Well, I appreciate you being. I don't know if I'm your first, but I'm at least a handful of your first engagements. Maybe I don't know. But.
Yes, for podcasts, you definitely sure are. Yeah, and I'm not going to be doing a lot of them. Yeah. I just wanted to get going and see what's out there. And awesome. I saw your stuff, and I figured, well, this is right up my alley. I understand the grit stuff.
Yeah. So I used to know a guy. He was a national speaker. I don't know if you know his name's Charlie Tremendous Jones.
Mm-hmm, sure.
He was a friend of mine right here in our town, and he tells a story. And the reason I bring it up is because you said, I haven't had a hug from a human being, but he tells a story about him going to an orphanage, and he gave on the way out, each orphan came up and gave him a hug, and he would hug each one of those kids. And one of the kids came up after the line went through, I suppose, and said, Mr. Jones, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that hug because I've never had a hug before. And these are like 6 or 8, 10-year-old kids. Wow. And so Charlie said to me, I knew then that from now on, I would hug everyone I talked to, everyone that came up. And so if you knew him when he was a speaking engagement, if you walked up to him, you were getting a hug. Yeah, and I never understood that. But what a story about human connection. And you're talking about it. Even being on an island, human connection is so important. And so
in fact, it's so true that you said that, because years ago I had this thing about, I want to live on an island, and I have this island that I go to, I've been going to for decades. And I said, let me give this a try. So I bought a portable bicycle that you fold up, and so it would fold up in my airplane. And I flew my airplane down, and I said, okay, here I am. I was bored out of my mind. Bored out. Now, it's a very small island, and I was single and by myself, so it wasn't as fulfilling. And to talk about, if you don't mind, about the power of human touch, there was a research at an orphanage, in fact, and in a particular room of babies in this orphanage, they noted that in every single bed that a baby slept in, an orphan, in every bed a baby died, except for one bed, and that was the bed closest to the door. And they had no idea why that was. So they decided to put a camera in that room and figure it out. And they noticed the lady, the nurse, or whomever it was that would go in every night to check on the babies. Before she left out the door, she picked up the baby that was closest to the door and loved on it. That's the human connection, the power of human connection. And that was the only bed in that room that a child never died.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And I'm like you in a way that I'm in a sales business. I sell real estate in 3 different states. And, my business is talking to people, even like this. The reason I got into podcasting was I hear all these amazing stories, all these amazing lessons from people. And I think, man, I got to write this down. And when podcasting came up, I thought, wow, what an opportunity to sit down and talk to people about their story. So that's why I started this Grind to Growth to Greatness. And it's really interesting because I'm a lot like you in that I'm kind of a loner a little bit. Yeah. I have this romantic idea of going in the woods and spending a week in the woods, or, going in overnight if I'm going to go archery hunting, and, parking myself in the tree. But it's a sad type of existence after some point. It's nice to reflect. Yeah. It's nice to think. But even as a loner type person, I see what you mean. It can be very lonely. It can be very, so you need that human connection.
100%.
But I appreciate that.
This episode of Grind to Growth to Greatness is brought to you by Terry Barr, Distinctive Real Estate, advising families across Pennsylvania and Northern Virginia for over 15 years. Visit the website at terrybarrealestate.com.
Now, you said you're pretty self-reliant. We kind of know that. We've seen that in some of your stuff. But is there anybody that you go to for your own mentoring, your own questions? When Gary says, you know what, I'm not sure about the gray, I call it the gray area. I'm not sure about the gray area right here. That's a decision I have to make. Is there anybody you go to, you call upon and say, hey, let me bounce this off this person?
Yeah, I have specific team members that I go to. And then I was very fortunate when I was younger to have a billionaire mentor. So I went to him as much as I could while he was alive. And then he also has an advisor that's still alive, and I go to that person as well. So yeah, so if I have emotional things that I need to be getting my head across or share, I have a specific team of really tight people in my loop that I discuss those things with. If I have financial decisions that, would this be the right course, or any suggestions, I have people to do that, because, I know the importance of getting other people's eyes on things. I may not always agree with them, and some of them get pissed off. You ask me for my advice and you don't listen to me, but it is what it is. But I still want that other perspective because it's so important.
Yeah. So how do you vet that information? In other words,
here's how you vet that information.
You do that.
Yeah. Here's the problem with this. This is a great subject. The problem with this stuff is people. All right. Okay. the problem with advice and those who seek advice, especially for those who seek advice, if you're not careful, in your mind, you will place a higher status on the person you're seeking advice that they don't really deserve. So people, for some reason, may create a higher status on me because I have books, I'm on TV, da-da-da-da-da. But if you're not careful, you'll be a sheep to the slaughter. Anytime I hear somebody say, I will listen to everything my mentor says, then you should be in a cult. All right. Yeah. So you're telling me that you don't use common sense.
Yeah.
The ultimate thing is UCS, use common sense. I have enough common sense. God bless me with a bunch of that. I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I got a lot of common sense. So I will analyze something. Now, keep in mind, too, when you analyze something, when you go for a mentor or you have somebody giving you advice, understand this one thing. Their values and beliefs may be different than you. Example, I was at the gym yesterday. There's a great guy there, lovely guy. He is huge. Everybody goes to him for advice. Why? Because he's huge.
Right.
Now, this is not him, and I don't know him well enough to ask him this. Or let's use it. Okay, so here's my point on that. So he's got this big muscle. So you want to think, well, what's the exercise that you do so I can get this big muscle? What makes you think that you can do that exercise and get that big muscle? Maybe he's not telling you he's doing steroids every other day. He's also not telling you he goes to the gym 7 days a week. And the reason his wife left him because he's more important about his own body than her family, or his family. You know what I mean? Or you go to Warren Buffett. I won't listen to everything Warren Buffett says, because his values and beliefs don't mix with mine. Warren Buffett, and it's not non-public knowledge. Public knowledge, you can search it. He's had a mistress for years. His wife knows about it. If that's within your value and belief system, great. Now, just because, like if I make more money than you, you may want to come to me, well, let me listen to Gary. Well, I wake up at 4:00 in the morning. You may not want to do that. I don't have a wife to curtail to and kids. So I'm putting in more time. You may not want to put in that much more time because you have a family that you value. So this is where common sense comes in. So what I do is when somebody gives me advice, I decode it. I figure out, okay, what I think is going to work for me and what I think is not. Sometimes I listen to their advice and things go amazing. Sometimes I listen to their advice and things suck. Sometimes I don't listen to their advice. Things go amazing. Sometimes I don't listen to advice and I pay the price. So you just have to figure it out. And the bottom line is make a friggin' decision.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of leaders will say that. Look, we all get stuck in planning. And I'm a big believer that you do and learn the rest. Come in now and figure it out later. Yeah. And, that's not always great. You have to have a plan going in, but at some point you got to pull the trigger and you got to go. Back that up, that comment. It was great conversation on advice. Back that up just a little bit. How much do you think your view of advice and view of mentorship or view of what we just talked about is based on the fact that when you were in your cult, that you took the advice unequivocally from whoever was leading the charge? Does that have a
I think, well, even more, even more so, Terry. I was questioning things inside of that because I was feeling like a sheep to the slaughter. Yeah. And then what I would do is, I remember on NBC, big thing came out on TV about how the cult is being sued for child molestation. Right. And everybody in the cult is saying, oh, these are all lies. These are all lies.
Right.
And I'm thinking, really, every single thing that's said, they're all lies. I'm just not that stupid, right? Yeah. That's when things started to change. And then as I got out, see, for example, I remember, I'll never forget this. I remember dating this girl. She's very tall. So she's very acutely aware of people's heights because she's so tall. I'm taller than her. So she said to me, how tall are you? I said, I'm 6'1". And she goes, you're not 6'1". You're taller than I go, no, I'm 6'1". I've believed all my life I'm 6'1". So if you pull out my driver's license, it says 6'1".
Right.
I measured myself, and on my pilot's license, which I don't look at often, I'm 6'2", and I'm actually 6'2", and I never knew that for all my adult life. All right. So then I started questioning stuff. And the problem is, don't believe everything you believe. You've got to be at the point where I question everything I believe because it could be wrong. The smart person believes half of what they hear.
Yeah.
The intelligent person knows which half to believe. So then once I left this occult, I had this huge epiphany of questioning everything. I believed that I hated broccoli. When I was a kid, my mom would give me broccoli, and I loved magic as a kid. I was really, really heavy into magic. So without her looking, I would take a napkin and I would scoop the napkin, the broccoli inside the napkin, get up and make an excuse that I got to go to the fridge and get some water. I would grab the handle of the fridge, and behind the fridge door was the garbage, and I would drop the broccoli in the garbage, right? So I'm thinking all my life, I just probably just don't like broccoli, but I've been believing that and haven't tried broccoli for the last 30 years.
Wow.
So now I eat broccoli because I give myself a programmed gag effect for it, and I've quit doing that. Don't ever invite me over and just give me a whole feast of broccoli. I'm not interested, Terry, but you know my point. That's my point.
No, I got your point. Is that now that's an interesting segue into, is that a big part of the business that you're in, the speaking that you do and the help that you give others, the questioning part of, questioning why do you, now I saw one of your YouTube videos when you were, I'm not sure what channel you were on, but you were talking to a doctor and somebody else in the room, and she was afraid of snakes, and you were going through that whole process of trying to get her fear to go away with this big snake. And, you were telling her to say, it's okay. This is no problem. Yeah. And asking herself, why is she scared of snakes? Is there a reason for that? Is that part of your teaching, if you will, on how to take red flags and change them into, it's no problem?
Yeah. You hear people say, which is not true, change your story, change your life.
Yeah.
Here's the truth of it. Change your story, believe your story, change your life. For example, if I say I can't, and you come in me and say, but Gary, say you can. So I say I can't. I can say I can till I'm blue in the face, but if I don't believe I can, I still can't.
Yeah, it's got to be connected to your belief, right?
Yes, but now the thing is, it is a beginning. I've got to start somewhere. I've got to start where I can. But now my next goal is to, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what can I do emotionally, physiologically, in a number of ways to get the 0 to a 2, the 2 to a 5, all the way to a 10. So now I'm only focusing on changing one thing, not the fear. I'm focusing on a scale of 1 to 10, what do I need to do now to take myself up the ladder till I get to the 10? Once the belief is in, that's when you get results. See, most people, this is where these gurus go wrong. Belief is not everything. How many times have you seen people that believe that don't take action?
Yeah.
So how is it then that you believe but you don't take action? Because you're missing the other ingredient. And to get that other ingredient, you'll have to buy my book. No, I am so kidding. I am not that. I will not do that. No. So there are only two things that cause us to have the desire and motivation to succeed at anything, Terry. One is belief, and the second is value. Value is the level of importance you place on something. So if you believe in your mind that you can do something of greatness, but you don't value it, it's not that important to you, there's nothing that will drive you. On the other hand, if it's so important for you to save the world, but you don't believe you can do it, you will still not take action. And then what happens is the moment something happens, and this is where you have to be acutely aware of what's going on in your world. The moment something happens that's positive, you have internalized a story that instantly increases your value and belief. Most people are not consciously aware of when that happens. So if you're not consciously aware of when that happens, when it increases, you're probably not consciously aware of when it happens, when it decreases. And when it decreases, then you can't stop it and control it and turn it around. That is the beauty of really understanding how you think.
No, it's very well said. And I think that's part of, for me, that's part of doing first and learning the rest. Because when you do it, you're going to have a certain level of success, even if it's one or
question
two.
About it.
And as you learn, you take that up, and then you believe that, I'd like to do this podcast. I think it would be nice, but unless I take steps to actually do it and to attach doing to my belief, then the belief is just blank. It's just empty.
Sure.
So,
and what we do. So I remember years ago, I figured out, well, how can I get to the point where I can get wrapped up with people who know this stuff, and there was no program like that. So I don't know what 25, 30 years ago, I created a program. It's our Jet Mastermind program because I'm big into flying jets and helicopters and all that stuff. So I take entrepreneurs with me on the jet. We fly to Sandals Resorts, who's my sponsor.
Right.
And we've been blessed to have them as a sponsor for 20 years. And they have a full day to pick my brain about the business strategies and the head blocks that are stopping them, because it doesn't take, years and years and years, but you need to have maintenance. You need to have emotional, mental maintenance and maintenance for your business. And people listening to your podcast, for example, that's hopefully part of their maintenance program to keep their head straight.
Now, do you have on that level, do you have masterminds, or call them maintenance groups, or mastermind groups that people get together on a period of time and they say, here's what Gary taught us. Here's what we've implemented into our business, into our life. What's going well? What's not going well? What do I need a reminder for? Do you do those kinds of things for people on an ongoing?
Yeah, I do. I have we have a number of different programs. We have like a $350,000 program for corporations where they are allowed to bring them and a small group. We fly them in our aircraft to a private island in the Bahamas, and we spend several days just, brainstorming them. And somebody would say, well, $350,000, that's crazy. Well, not if you get 5 times the return. It's not crazy at all, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have an inner circle program where they have me and or somebody on my team once a week. We also include that in having them come with me to the Bahamas for the day. So we have one coming this Sunday that we'll be taking our guests to. And then they have an entire year to meet with my team regularly. Plus we have a portal where they, understand the psychology of what I like to show, like authors and high-end, business leaders and speakers. I like to show them how to take hopefully they're making at least 6 figures. They don't have to, but take a six-figure salary and condense it where they can make it literally in one day or one event. Yeah,
I did read that. And that was that was an interesting approach to kind of 10Xing your business in a very short time. Yeah.
There's always a smarter way. Always a smarter way.
There is
always a smarter way.
Book I read recently by John Acuff. It's called Soundtracks. And I don't know how much you read. You say you read a lot of books. It's a great book. And it talks about when those triggers come up in your mind, you right at that moment, you run a soundtrack in your mind. I cannot hit a driver. It's going to go right to left. I know when I step up to a driver, all of a sudden that soundtrack in my mind starts playing.
Sure.
And he talks about how to change your soundtrack. And it sounds a lot like what you're talking about is reprogramming yourself to think differently in those moments when those red flags come up. And so it's very interesting.
Let me throw something on top of that, if you don't mind, Terry. And again, I don't say this to come across arrogant, but this is why I'm known for doing in 1 year what therapists or business consultants can't do in a year. I do that in one session. On triggers. Every single book you'll read, or everybody here that says the word triggers, you hear all of them referring to a trigger as something negative that creates that negative soundtrack or the negative story. You must learn to identify your positive triggers and identify the story you've attached to those. Mm-hmm. Because if you identify your positive triggers when you're happy and excited, not when you're bored and depressed and going to commit suicide or crying or screaming or whatever, if you learn to identify the positive ones and understand that you've attached the story to that, it gets you acutely aware that you are aware of triggers, whether they are good or bad. So now if you're only aware of the bad ones, then you have to wait for the bad ones to come up for you to be aware of it. And sometimes it becomes too late because now you're already in the mire, right? Yeah. So learn to identify your positive triggers and understand that a coin has 2 sides. And because you're happy because of this trigger, somebody is experiencing the exact same thing and they're crying their eyeballs out. It's a great way to keep acutely aware of understanding how you've attached things, not just the negative, but also the positive.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I know that as a young person, I was pretty emotional in a lot of ways, whether it was high energy, whether it was anger, whether it was super excitement, whether it was really down, depression, that kind of thing. I was really highs and lows. And not until about 8 or 10 years ago did I understand what a trigger was. And I would find myself, I'd have a meeting and it would go well. And I would walk out and I would have this feeling of elation, this feeling of, that was awesome. Why was that awesome? Like, why do I feel this way? Or by the same token, I'd have a short conversation with somebody and I'd walk out and I'd be like, that was awful. Like, why do I feel bad about that conversation? So it was about 10 years ago where I started understanding I even had triggers. And I think a lot of people don't even know that they have triggers. And that's a problem.
Yeah, especially in relationships. And I have a program, a part of one of my teachings is I teach people a lot of the problems that you have, you think it's the other person. But many times, if you'll understand, you realize the problem that you have is between me and me, not me and you. So if I have a cut on my hand or my skin or my arm, and you come by and accidentally brush me and I get pissed off at you, it's not your fault. I'm the one with the cut, and I'm just responding to somebody touching me. So the problem is between me and me, not me and you. Right. So when you're aware of this, for example, I don't know, 2 days ago, I was under some massive, massive stress. And anytime I'm under massive stress and meet with my team, I tell them right up front, if I'm a little short with you or I want you to know my stress level is a little high. The problem is between me and me, not me and you. Automatically, they think, okay, they don't have to be defensive because Gary has already admitted that he's under a lot of stress. And my perceptions of things are going to be a little more intense, I should say, than my normal days. So if I'm aware of that, and if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I say, honey, I want to need to share something with you. I want you to know up front, this is a problem between me and me, not me and you. She can just drop her guard down. She doesn't have to be defensive, but you have to have enough awareness to do that. And you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So if you're into improving yourself and improving your business and improving your relationships, this is how you begin to think, or at least hopefully you start thinking this way.
So do you have any habits? One of my questions on here is on the questions that I sent you is, and that kind of leads me into that. Do you have any habits that you utilize on a daily basis? So you get up at 4:00. What are we doing at 4:00? Are we, do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you say, okay, I want to prepare myself for the day and what I might run into or what have you? What are your habits that get you into realizing?
I'm not a ritual person. I have a book of goals and so forth. My habit is pretty much wake up, pee, and hit the shower and rock and roll. I take care of myself very well. Most of my diet is vegan. I exercise, 4 to 6 times a week. I get out of the gate like a horse out of the gate when I wake up. I take no medication. I don't take anything to wake me up. I take nothing to put me to sleep. And when I go to bed like a snoring baby. But I don't have any particular habits. I mean, I'm very, very disciplined. I will start off in the morning, figure, okay, what's my priorities? What do I need to accomplish today? And what's the big picture? But I'm so focused. I know what the big picture is all the time. And I'm always making sure I make moves toward that big picture. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't, like I said, I read 2 to 4 books a month. I don't have a specific time slot in which I sit down and read these books. I know, for example, it's something simple. I'm going to take the jet with a friend of mine to Las Vegas next month. Well, that's a decent length of a flight. So while I'm in Las Vegas, I'm going to have some downtime. So I'm going to make sure some of my downtime includes reading a book, stuff like that. Yeah. So my schedule is so volatile. I mean, I was in Jamaica last week, wasn't expecting to tomorrow or the next couple of days. I'm flying all over the place. So I can't keep that much of a routine, but I can be disciplined. That's the key. Discipline will get you so many places.
Yeah. So you do have an aviation bug. I did read that. You've mentioned it a couple times. You've got, 6,000 or 8,000 hours of aviation time. What drew you to that? Tell me, this is a little bit off topic, but why do you have that bug?
Yeah, it's, I also wear flip-flops all the time. And what does that have to do with anything? Yeah. Freedom. I love the word freedom. I remember one day my uncle was an airplane pilot. And I remember one day flying with him with my dad in the back seat. And he was in the pilot's seat, which is the left side in an airplane. And he would let me fly a little bit, and I wanted to push more buttons, and I just got addicted to that. And I said, I just got to do this, and I am ridiculously addicted. In fact, I have about 85% of all FAA licenses, and my goal is to I'm looking to try to get all 100% of them. So it just depends on time.
That's quite the goal. I fly drones for my business.
Oh yeah.
In order to
fun.
In order to do that, you got to have at least the written part of the pilot's license. They make you take that, but
right.
I don't have any big desires to get up in the air. I don't know if I trust myself for that, but
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So
in fact, I have to go to jet school week after next. It's a big commitment.
So Gary, I thank you for your story. I guess the last question I really have, and I kind of had the question when I started looking into you a little bit, but what's your why? Why do you do this? Why do you care? From a person that went through all this, all of this anxiety and all this tragedy, and you came out the other side. Why do you want to share it? What's your why in life?
Well, I correlate why with purpose, because you can have a why. Sure. And if you don't mind me going off of that a little bit, but I'll stay on it. Sure. You'll hear people often speak, like, on stages, you'll hear somebody say, your why should be so big it should make you cry. Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if I buy that. And I'll tell you why. Pun intended. Yeah. If you are in front of an audience, Terry, with 1,000 smokers that want to quit smoking, and you ask everybody in that audience, show of hands, how many of you would like to quit smoking? Everybody's probably going to put their hands up, at least probably 90% of it. So you share with them some strategies, blah, 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 blah. And what do you think the percentages are of people who are going to really quit smoking? It's very, very small. But we established earlier that everybody has a why. You can ask everybody who had their hands up, why? But why only a small group when everybody has a why? Back to the word value. Value is the level of importance they place on the why.
Sure.
That's the key. Your why can always be the same, but life will kick you down, and the value of importance that you put on your why will decrease. Some things will happen to cause it to increase. Everybody has a why. I don't care if your why is to wake up because your bladder is full, and that's why you wake up.
Sure.
With that being said, there's three things that I really, really enjoy in my life. Number one, not in this order, but one is my aviation. I love aviation. I love the islands, and I love to help people. And that's how I created my Jet Mastermind. I love to see people excited about sharing new things in their life with the experience that I give them on that, and then teaching them in their business. And when you share knowledge with somebody and they bite onto it, and they come back to you and say, you've changed my business, my life, my income, there's nothing more fulfilling than that. And that's my why. I just enjoy that so much.
Yeah, and they feed off of each other. That feed off.
Oh,
of each
yeah,
other, for sure.
It is a great feed.
Can you have purpose without passion?
You can. I don't know how long lasting it will be. And I hear the argument. Oh, you really don't have to have passion. Then I hear people say you do have to have passion. Let me tell you what. If you don't have passion, if you don't have something you truly desire and you're passionate about, you are going to get knocked down. Period. End of story. And if you don't have enough passion, you are not going to get back up, or you're not going to get up quickly. Period. End of story. So that is why my life is passion-based and passion-driven. Period. I know what my passion is, and I tap into that. You find somebody who's trying to do something for the money, just for money's sake, and they don't have the passion for doing it. Number one, you can see right through them in a heartbeat, and they won't last long because they're going to go jump to the next so-called money-making whatever for making money, for the making of money's sake.
Yeah, it's been one of my favorite questions, because I know that our youth of America, our youth of today are told, find something you're passionate about and go do that. And I think that's half the story. I think that being passionate about something is fine, but if there's not a purpose to attach to that passion, I think it will eventually be empty. Because I agree
with that. Yeah. Sure.
And so I like to answer or ask that question to see what other people think, and if you can have passion without purpose. You can for a while. I'm just not sure you can have it for the long term.
Right.
And so I tell people, look, find something you're good at that you enjoy, and just do it, and eventually you'll become passionate about it. I believe, but I don't know.
100%. But you still have to bear with me a second. You still have to have that passion, though, because
sure,
it's going to get sucked out of you, as you know. I mean, sure. And if you're not focused on that future, and again, if you don't have a purpose, it's hard to keep going. So I think they're really all very much entwined together. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, listen, Gary, I appreciate you coming on. We've covered a lot of ground. You've covered it before, but my listeners have I think you're going to be blessed with your story, with some of the advice you have. And if you are interested in listening and hearing more about what Gary has to say, go to GaryCoxe.com. That's Gary, GaryCoxe.com, to see a little bit about more about what he does. You mentioned you have a new book or a newer book. You want to tell them what your book is? Go right ahead.
No, it's an actual program that we've got. It's an online live program that I'm doing, and it's a Profitable Business Pilot Plan. ProfitableBusinessPilotPlan.com.
There you go.
When they go to that, they have the opportunity to come online with me. We do this about once a month or so. We have a Q&A session. I'm sure after listening to this, some of your viewers are going to have some questions about their business.
Right.
But the whole idea in the Profitable Business Pilot Plan and everything I do is how quick can you get to the next level? You got to work smarter, not harder. And we all hear that. But what does that really, really mean? And when we tap into that, I want to get to point B quicker as possible so I can enjoy C, D, and F sooner and enjoy the profits and the benefits and the beauty of it,
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. So, Gary, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to have you. And for those of you that want to go to GaryCoxe.com, see what he's all about. And until next time, we have a great guest next week. I'm not going to tell you who he is, but you're going to love him. So tune in next week. Grind to Growth to Greatness, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Grind to Growth to Greatness podcast. Our passion is to talk to the brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, creators, athletes, anyone who's made it, and dive into their struggles, their successes, and their secrets. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Grind to Growth to Greatness. See you next time.